Hello everyone, welcome and hope you're having a great VMworld. VMworld is a pretty exciting time for me. My name is Jay Malkani. I'm the product manager for our vRealize suite and vCloud suite of products, which is our cloud management platform set of products. I've been at VMware about 5 years and I come every year to VMworld. And why it's so exciting for me is because one, all year we are essentially in the trenches developing products, right? And this is the time when we get to showcase our products, talk about them, and bring them to you. But that's not the only reason why this is so exciting for me. The more exciting part of it is that we get to meet all of you, right? And talk about how you are using our products and hear the real world implementations of what we have been developing in the labs. And that's why this session is probably one of my favorite sessions, because here we are really bringing our customers together, trying to build a community so you can get to know some of the people, right? Meet with them, understand how are they using vRealize products, what are their IT challenges, how are they solving those challenges, what are the challenges in using the products, right? What are some of the best practices that they can share with you on their implementations, and make it really more of a discussion so we can all learn together on how to best use these products to realize our cloud initiatives. So that's really the purpose of this session today. I will be doing very little talking. That's why also this is my favorite session. So I do less work and our customers do most of the work. So I'm very excited to be on stage with some of our really fantastic implementations. I'm joined here by Michael Mosa, who's the CIO of Join Experience, by Andrew Hillis, who is the group head of information services at Almac, Burke Pune. I skipped Bart Pushchens. Is that the right pronunciation?
Yeah, well done.
From ING, Burke Pune from SAP, and Isaac Zarb from NX Systems. So I'll just set a little bit of context and then pass it on and ask some intriguing questions. By the way, if you guys have any questions, please raise your hand. There is mics available at the back. It's important that you speak in the mic because other people can hear you, and also this session is recorded, so those who couldn't make it or had other conflicting sessions can actually review the session and get the most out of it. So one of the key things that we are seeing constantly in IT as a big challenge is this really explosion of digital apps. When I joined VMware about five years or a little more than 5 years ago, the main story around virtualization was, hey, we need to save cost, right? Because there's servers, there's unused capacity, we want to virtualize, we want to save cost. But the conversation has rapidly shifted to this explosion of digital apps. Like, everybody's sort of walking with an iPhone in their pocket, this supercomputer. There's apps for everything, and that's really dynamically changing business models, right? Banks have to accept online transactions which are done through your phone. Transportation industries, you have people are calling cabs through their phone, making reservations over the phone. I mean, every enterprise is basically disrupted. And because your lines of business, they're developing, and they have to develop a lot of applications very, very fast in order to stay competitive. Otherwise, your business will really be eaten away by your competitor, right? And that puts a lot of pressure on us, on IT, right? To be able to set up those environments and deliver them in such a rapid fashion. And a lot of lines of businesses are actually saying, they're setting up these developer clouds. Many times they're going directly to a public cloud provider like Amazon or something like that to set up their environments. But the challenge is, and you know this better than me, that a lot of the critical data that those apps need, whether you're in a financial services organization or in a telecommunications organization or in a or you handle customer profiles, all that data is within your organization, it's secure, right? So how do you sort of manage that? So there's this really tension between, on one hand you need to be agile, and on the other hand you want to also have control and yet be efficient. So how do you sort of do this in a very streamlined and controlled manner, and provide that sort of DevOps and developer cloud experience? And that's where our whole software-defined data center and our cloud management platform comes to be, because once you adopt this software-defined data center, you can set up your infrastructure, your environments in software, right, which can be brought up, brought down, torn apart, all in software very, very quickly. And you can set up policies to automate the operations, to automate the delivery of that infrastructure, and do it in a controlled manner. And that's where the cloud management platform really plays a key role. And the cloud management platform, combined with the software-defined data center, is what's allowing a lot of IT enterprises to set up a cloud and offer it as a service to their lines of business, to their developers, and do it in a way which allows for complete self-service, right? So you are not in the way of your developers. They are using your platform, your cloud management platform, to deploy their applications, whether it's in a private cloud or whether it's in a public cloud. So our three offerings, which we are basing our cloud management platform on, are cloud automation. Some of you may know this as vRealize automation, or some people who've been using it for a long time may know it as VCAC, or vCloud Automation Center. And some people who've been using it for a very, very long time may know it as Dynamic Ops, right? Which is the company we acquired to form cloud automation. The second product here is cloud operations, which is really vRealize automation. vCenter operations was its prior name. And the third, which is cloud business management, or vRealize business. So that's all is that I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to ask now our panelists to go ahead and talk about their organization first, and talk about what is their team doing, and how are they helping their organizations run their business. So let's start here with Michael.
So hello, I'm Michael Mossel. I'm the CIO of Join, and so in fact, some of you might have heard in the keynote this morning what Pat said about incumbents and losing the advantage that they have. So we are owned 50% by the Luxembourgish incumbent, so Luxembourgish Post. It's a project that was sponsored by the Luxembourgish government, and we are seen as the international brand. So it's a kind of a reaction towards that, because building that up inside an old-fashioned organization is kind of difficult to cope with the agility that you need in the market today. So what we actually do is, we did launch last year 2 different countries as an operator, as Luxembourg and Belgium. We this year expand the portfolio, so we started with classical telco operations, with cloud, things like Office 365 and so on. And we expand this year to music, energy. It's really a kind of a converged platform that we had to build to offer any kind of subscription-based services to our customers, which is a quite new and challenging thing. So when we came to the market initially, the message was there is no roaming anymore. Europe as a home country, you can consume our products wherever you want, which was obviously a very aggressive message at that moment. And so going from there, this is something that we achieved from a blank sheet situation. So we didn't have to deal with all the legacy that the classical telco had to be, and that explains a little bit why we had the chance to be, on one hand, had to be more agile, on the other hand, had the chance to be more innovative in terms of using technologies like VMware.
Thank you, Mike. Let's go to Andrew to talk about Almac.
Yes, hello. Andy Hillis is my name. I'm the group head of IS for Almac. We're a group of pharmaceutical service companies headquartered in Northern Ireland. So our breadth of services is from drug discovery, molecular modelling at one end, right through to commercial sales and marketing at the other. Typically for American companies who don't have a European presence, we offer a range of services to allow them to sell their drugs in Europe and beyond. Where we have implemented a private cloud, in effect, is within our clinical technologies division, which provides randomization, patient enrollment, diaries, and site inventory management for clinical trials worldwide. We're probably number 2 in that particular marketplace. Maybe 2 years ago, we decided to rewrite that customer-facing application, and as part of the re-architecture and the greenfield approach to it, we decided that we would also make sure that through automation that we would be delivering the right code into the right environment at the right time, which is dictated to by both development at one end and their end users at the other.
Excellent, thank you. How about at ING? What are you guys up to?
ING, first and foremost, is a bank, and I'm the happy chief architect for the infrastructure within the bank. That spans approximately 60 data centers, not giving the exact numbers, where there's approximately 50,000 people working, and they work with data, and data is in essence the asset of the bank, numbers. So we're also transforming into being more of an IT organization than being actually a classical bank. To give an example, the bank was big and it's shrinking, and IT is only growing and growing. The setup of the bank is moving to a full DevOps way of working. So we had waterfall programs that would run for years and years, but the outcome of those programs would usually be outdated by the time that we got there. So 2 years ago in the Netherlands, where our headquarters sit, that first move to DevOps was made. That resulted in approximately 400 DevOps teams with approximately 7-8 people per team who developed the IT for the bank, which is a transition from a traditional waterfall delivery with outsourcing parties and hiring external knowledge to a bank that owns the engineering skills to actually build the IT functions that our customers require. Because to be different in a banking world, it's not about having the best payments engine, but it's about having that experience for a customer. By now, that transition to DevOps is even going to be pushed a bit further. Again, started in the Netherlands, there is no business and IT anymore. The boundaries have been broken down, and it's the so-called Spotify model. I don't know if anyone is aware of that, but that's basically the blueprint how we want to do things. And that basically brings DevOps teams broken down to marketing guys, finance guys, IT guys, and as a whole, they are responsible for delivering IT, in a nutshell.
Excellent. You guys have more people than we do in our business unit. I want to work at ING.
If you can code, then you're welcome.
Exactly. Let's talk about SAP. We all know what SAP does, but very interested in what your team does there, Bert.
Yeah, I'm working in the Cloud Platform Services organization, and we are delivering cloud infrastructure to our internal customers, and we are also starting to provide it to external customers with the different names that are around, and I am personally responsible for delivering VCOps or vRealize operations as a service to our internal customers and to the direct colleagues. And yeah, the goal of using VCOps is to be able to get a view of the status of the complete infrastructure from within one tool. Before we have decided to use VCOps, and this was in 2011, we had around 40 vCenter instances, and we had to log on to every vCenter to check what's the status of the ESX host, of the VMs and storage, all that stuff. Currently, we are around 140, 150 active vCenter instances, And this shows that it is not possible to do that without a monitoring tool that is able to combine all that data. And yeah, on the other hand, it gives us the opportunity to detect things that we haven't seen before. So we can now drive a much higher over-provisioning without risking the workload, because now it's the vCenter is not, or the vCenter, the number of vCenters are not a black box anymore. We are now seeing what happens if we change things. We can now evaluate the risk and can say, okay, in this part of the landscape, we can have that over-provisioning compared to another part based on the hardware is used or based on the type of VMs that is running in that environment. And yeah, so we are on the way of optimizing our landscape with VCOps.
Excellent. And Isaac, can you introduce NX Systems?
Yes, I'm from NX Systems. We're basically a payment distribution company. We move money around. We had a number of challenges, basically being PCI compliant and being flexible, which doesn't always work well. So we use nearly all the VMware suite of products. And we first started from going from bare metal to virtualization, and then started using Replication Manager, and now we're using the whole suite, automation. Basically, we had a problem, developers were waiting for resources. So with automation, we can give them self-service, and they can create their own images, destroy their own images. They don't need to wait on IT for resources, so that made us very more efficient. Testing can go on without waiting for IT. Basically, we removed IT from a bottleneck with automation.
So, one of the things that, when I was in IT, actually, I can code, right? So when I was in IT some time back, I used to be at Cisco Systems, before a long time ago. There was, when we used to work, we used to develop all the systems within our IT team, and then we used to sort of roll them out. Environments were set up within IT, but now we are sort of seeing this different trend, right, where there's really a consumerization of IT, where IT is really providing these services, and then there are different types of consumers who are basically using self-service portals and automation to access these portals. So let's go and touch upon that a little bit, and maybe we'll start with ING, right? Since you were the first one to pull my leg about coding, I want to ask you, can you talk about the different types of consumers that you have within ING? I believe you have like 4 or 5 different types of consumer profiles, and how do you serve them?
Yeah, we have the same strategy that IT is becoming or infrastructure, let's be more explicit, infrastructure is becoming a commodity, as in it's more or less becoming a standard. There's not much debate anymore if a mainframe is a good thing. Infrastructure is becoming a commodity, and we're catching up with it. It might seem obvious, but we still are not there. I always annoy my CIOs by saying that there's one standard within the bank from an infrastructure perspective, only one, and that's 230 volts. And that's only because we sold the US. So standardization and becoming that commodity is really what we try for. And we took steps in there, so it's not that we're in a bad shape, but we drive or want to drive that standardization of IT to make it a really self-service capability for the developers. So the infrastructure teams should be out of the way. Everything that a developer would need to do his work, to add value to the bank, should be automated. And we started fairly simple with just VM provisioning. Virtual machines, that's the basis of what a developer needs. But as soon as you go down that path, it becomes limited again. You need to automate your infrastructure as a whole. It needs to be about load balancers, it needs to be about firewalls, it needs to be about the middleware. So in that provisioning, if you look at the user groups, it is the DevOps teams that I see as my customer. Those require infrastructure, and it could be machines, a set of machines, it could be a platform, it could be firewall, and it could be load balancing, and I want to serve them with an automated process which is fully hands-off, and they can have their systems within hours, not within days, but within hours. So those groups, there's functionally some breakdowns in the groups, but we want to give them flexibility, because if you try to fit them in some kind of a mold of saying there's only 3 groups, that will never fit. Those 3 groups will be very unhappy. So what we defined within the infrastructure is that we have default deployment patterns that we want to deploy. And if you want to go to that level of automation, then you end up with some kind of a suite to manage the whole. And within ING, traditionally we had a bit of a best of breed approach, and now we're in the best of suite, as in we chose for VMware to do the automation portal with VRA, or VCAC it was called, so for those who would use it. And to also do the monitoring in an automated fashion, because just spinning up a system is not sufficient. People want to see what's going on in the system. So you need something like VCOps. There's other aspects as well. If you want to do load balancing and firewalling, you could find other products to do so, but we decided to do that with NSX because it nicely ties into the monitoring, for example. And with that construct of tools, we try to deliver default patterns, a default set of machines with firewalling and load balancing that can be consumed by a DevOps team. And a DevOps team is developers with a preference for a platform. That's maybe the distinction that you could take. It's either the Windows side or the Linux side. But besides those separations, there's hardly any distinction between the DevOps groups themselves. It is about those default patterns that come as a whole. It's not about a single virtual machine anymore.
And Andrew, at Almac, you have a distinct set of needs, right? Because you're providing clinical trials or systems for providing clinical trials to different sets of customers. So can you talk about their needs, and how do you actually cater to those needs using your systems?
Yeah, well, we essentially have 2 user groups that we provide these services for. The internal people who develop the products. There are 2 that is further split down into 2 groups. So we have a group called New Products and Services, which enhance the feature set of the clinical software, and then we have a production IT group who covers that feature set and perhaps provides a little bit of bespoke development if a client needs it, and they then get involved in the release management and pushing that through into customer test and then into production. So at one end of the cycle, that group is involved, and then in the dev test environment they can also self-service and provision environments as and when they need them. We bought VCAC and we're now running VRA, I guess, in terms of the versioning. So what have we learned from it? I suppose the main learnings have been that the product initially was somewhat more complicated than we had thought. However, we've gotten up to speed with that now and dealt with some of the foibles of it, and the business are delighted now with the ability to self-provision, and also to get reduce our risk profile by making sure that everything's done the same way, time after time after time.
Yep, repetition makes perfect, right? Actually, how many folks here have vRealize automation deployed in their environment? Don't be shy. So there's have you we know that there have been challenges, right, with VRA 6X deployment, and as Andrew mentioned, it was pretty heavy and to get started with it. But once you had it set up, then you could offer full self-service automation. We are releasing vRealize Automation 7.0. And I don't know if any of you were part of the beta, but any of you part of the beta for that? Yeah, there. So that has we've brought together a lot of improvements in installation and upgrade, and having a wizard-based deployment, having a simple, lightweight architecture, in consolidating the application blueprints and infrastructure blueprints into one design canvas, so you can easily offer multi-tier applications to be set up as a service. So a lot of folks here are doing that, and I actually wanted to open it up to the audience if any of you had any questions at this time for the panel before we sort of move ahead. Okay. If you think of any questions, just raise your hand and I'll keep going. So let's go to join experience, and can you talk about as a telco sort of provider, how are you becoming a broker of cloud services? Because we hear this a lot, right? Because IT wants to be the single stop shop for all the lines of business to come and say, I want to deploy a workload, and it should go to a public cloud or a private cloud, and I really should be the broker of cloud services. So I'm really interested in that use case, if you can walk us through that.
Okay, let me first say I'm quite impressed about what Bart said about financial sector. I didn't think that the guys are that far in that area. So most people in telco are not yet, because still most people in telco believe, or at least until the beginning of this year, that telco and virtualization was not the perfect match, because you have 5 nines, you have all this carrier grade stuff or whatever. So we had a total different situation when we started, because we had a greenfield situation that's quite unique for telco at that moment. So what we did, I mentioned we started operations in 2 countries last year, but before we really took our time to define the architecture for it. And we started with actually what was presented this morning also again as something which VMware calls now Evo SDDC or something like that. At that moment, almost 3 years ago, that word doesn't exist or whatever. So what we did actually was based on top-down building a kind of a blueprint or whatever, how to build a software-defined data center. And that means you have a layer model, so you have data center layer, you have a storage layer, and a network layer, and everything was totally separated from each other, and there's no application going straight to a layer underneath. There are always well-defined mechanisms to communicate for applications, which allows you at that moment, obviously, that all the services that you want to provide towards your end customers would be totally independent of what you call infrastructure underneath. And what is also very similar to what was presented by ENG, we even don't call it infrastructure anymore, it's called platform. And it's including also the ESB, so the middleware, and it's also including the BPM layer on top of it. So the team that is providing that digital platform at that moment has a different role, and there are no verticals anymore in that one. And so that's quite similar. Now, if you want to build or become a broker of cloud services, and that's a little bit following your question, obviously, you need somewhere a platform to provision it. So we are working together with a Chinese company called ZTE, who is providing our main platform. So it's the provisioning platform for telco and also the real-time billing platform behind. All that is virtualized on VMware. That moment it was quite challenging because in the data path, so it's nothing that you're allowed to stop, because then communication doesn't work anymore. Yeah. So in the meantime, we are already much further. Now the entire industry is talking about something which is called NFV, so virtualizing core telco functions. And also there we, I think, are quite advanced in that sense. So that platform, in combination with another cloud platform called Odin, also relying on VMware, is allowing us to provision any kind of services and any kind of combination of services. And that's very important, because what you see currently in the telco is that they provide different services, but they're all siloed. So they provide television, they provide whatever you can think of, but they have totally separated billing systems, totally separated ways of provisioning them, while we have one single instance of customer repository and of service portfolio. So we can build products like Office 365 in combination with telco that allows predictability for cost if you go and travel around Europe, for instance.
And this one thing I've noticed is that a lot of IT organizations, when they set up clouds, they give it a name, right? It needs to have a brand, just like we have a brand here, which we call vCloud Suite or vRealize Suite. And I'm kind of curious, like, what are your clouds called, and how do you sort of brand your cloud, and how do you market it internally to or externally to your customers?
Yeah, obviously there are, let's say, to see what is the customer. We have two different brands. One is more B2C brand, the other one is a B2B brand. But on the other hand, the whole project together with the external partner ZTE is not only the joint project, but is also providing an MVNE, so an enabler platform for other MVNOs to use that platform and build their business on top of it. So that's something which is important to understand. Now, which kind of services do we cloud services do we provide? That depends obviously on the sector. And we have the B2C brand. This is clearly on one part. We also have the SMB part, where we say, okay, for instance, services like Office 365 that are provisioned in that domain. But we also have an enterprise part. And there it comes into projects like M2M domain or whatever, where we use specifically the entire VMware stack and also NSX to build their products which are not possible without having that stack. Give you an example, in the M2M space, for instance.
What does M2M stand for?
Machine to machine, so automotive industry or whatever, you have wind miles or whatever. So what the telco is doing in that domain is mainly that they say, okay, you have a bunch of SIM cards or whatever, and we give you a portal that you manage your SIM cards, and maybe you have a BI solution that you can follow where your SIM cards are and so on, but we can do much more, and that means that we are able to provide secure environments for our customers where they say, okay, maybe in our data center they place applications, maybe also in their own data center on premise, or maybe even in the public cloud. And we isolate that in a secure context, and we are able to automate that end to end. So when the customer comes to the portal and says, okay, we want to build up an environment, at that moment the whole thing gets provisioned and secured via NSX.
Okay. And in NX Systems, what do you call your cloud, and how do you sort of brand it or sell it to your different consumers?
Well, basically, it's we call it the cloud.
Wow.
And everybody thinks it's constantly expanding and it's infinitive capability, but most of our clients are internal clients, and we're now starting to offer white label to other customers, but that hasn't been done yet. We're implementing NSX to do that. Internally, it's mostly for DevOps, that they can have the environment they need when they need it, and it gives them a lot of automation, autonomy, because they can, basically, if they need 100 VMs, they can scale and size the VMs themselves. They don't need to wait for other resources. Our cloud is basically used to host our infrastructure, which is VMs, the production machines and development machines.
Okay, and how do you all structure your teams in order to offer your cloud? I'm kind of curious, maybe at ING, you can walk us through what are the different organizational structures that you, how is your, it's always a people, process, technology sort of equation.
Yep. We call our cloud also a cloud.
IPC or something?
Yeah, it has a bit like ING private cloud. To make very explicit, it's internally within ING's data centers. Because of regulations, we want to do this ourselves. So that's hidden in the name ING private cloud, which is going to be offered to all entities of the bank across the globe. ING is a federation of banks. We have headquarters in Amsterdam, but basically we have a headquarter in every country, which to a certain extent has some kind of independence. Hence, we have 60 data centers. To build something like a cloud, you need size and volume and money to be able to do so. So we started that out of the Netherlands. To be offered to all entities in the bank, being the commercial banking side and also the retail bank, but also the group services and infrastructure ourselves. We're also consuming IT quite a lot for monitoring, for example, or handling log files and all those kind of aspects. In the setup of the bank and how to do this, there's a couple of breakdowns that we did. There's, so at least from my perspective, there's the evolution. You grow towards a certain point, or you take the revolution, as in I want to do it clean sheet because technology evolves so fast, I need to get rid of a lot of stuff that I already have and start from scratch. Have a greenfield setup and work from there. We chose for the greenfield approach, so the revolution instead of the evolution and maturing slowly. We said we start from scratch. Starting from scratch also means we need to build a new team. And we need to build new functionality and processes around it. Because with the evolution of IT, we also have an evolution of processes. A firewall change would still be some kind of a process with all kinds of review steps and approval steps. And if someone wanted the firewall to be changed, that would mean still weeks of processing of people that need to look at something that's going to change and have an opinion about it. That's not really DevOps. And with the virtualization of the network, of the compute and the storage, we can be much faster. But to be able to deliver that speed, you need to review your process. It's all of a sudden not about technology anymore, it's about how do you run your IT organization. And if you choose for that revolution model, you can say upfront, we're going to do different technologies, but also assess the processes that we have. Is ITIL fit for a DevOps way of working?
So traditionally, IT has been organized as like, we've had server teams, we've had storage teams, we've had network teams, and I'm sure, I don't know how many of you are, have been organized in one of the other areas. Some of our customers have, VI teams, which are next to server teams. I'm kind of curious that as you guys offer this self-service DevOps-oriented cloud, how do these boundaries kind of change, and what is the new model for organizing IT?
Within ING, there's already some years ago we did the shift in the organization, and it was not technology teams, but it was the infrastructure teams. So the network, storage, and compute came together, and the platform teams were organized. They were the consumers of the infrastructure teams, built the platforms like Oracle, WebSphere, Tomcat, all that kind of stuff on top of it. And they have another layer of consumers, which are the developers. And that's basically the three-layered model of the organization. The pain that it exposes is who is doing what exactly. If you consume a platform, which sounds great and it's self-service provisioning, but you hand over a WebSphere instance with an Oracle database, who is then, in this DevOps way of working, responsible for the tweaking and tuning of an Oracle instance? You should say the DevOps team, which is a very fair answer. But with 400 DevOps teams, you would have 400 DBAs, all in the individual teams. So that doesn't scale, or you get a very expensive organization with a lot of skills that are not being utilized. So breaking down that model is fine, but you then need to detail who's doing what exactly in what layer, who's responsible for what, and how do I share the metrics and dependencies across those teams in those layers. It works, but it's painful, and you need to learn, and it will go wrong because you can't see it all coming up front, but you need to have the technology means, and then have a good look at how you organize yourself and define exactly where you put the boundary.
Excellent. As we sort of all learn through ING's mistakes, let's go talk about a little bit about our products, right? And we know that one thing is that yes, you've organized your teams to collaborate and work more effectively and offer this self-service cloud, but then you also need to have kind of the right tools in place working together in order to offer some of these capabilities. And you have chosen the vRealize suite, and I'm kind of curious, and so must be everybody else, on how exactly are these tools used. So maybe we go now to Burke, and you have this the cloud at SAP, and you have to monitor the cloud, right? Day 2 operations becomes really important if you're going to have self-service. So talk us through how in detail you are using vRealize operations to do the end-to-end monitoring, and what role does that play in your day 2 operations of the cloud?
Yeah, currently we don't have a full end-to-end monitoring in place. So the application part is missing, and some of the infrastructure part is missing. But the first goal, as I said, is that we have the complete infrastructure visible in one tool. This is something that we have achieved. Now the next step is that the colleagues are using VCOps for the status performance monitoring, and other colleagues are using it for the capacity planning, reporting type of things. And my goal is to extend that service to in the best case, include every component that it is involved in that cloud. So this means I still have to include the network part. On the other side, I have to include the SAP application part. And some things are provided by VMware itself based on the management packs. For some things, we talked, for instance, to Plumedora because they deliver SAP and HANA adapters. They're also delivering adapters for UCS and other kinds of things. So this is very important for us to get the data inside VCOps, and it is working better for us if the quality of the management pack is high enough. So what we rely on is auto discovery, automatic relationship mapping, not only inside that adapter, but also between adapters. So this means, for instance, if we monitor a vCenter and on top of that we have a vCloud Director running, we install both management packs for vCenter and for vCloud Director, and then we expect, and this is also done by the adapters, that automatically the relationships between the VM that is visible in vCenter and the VM that is visible in vCloud Director is automatically made to be able to say if that data store, for instance, has a problem, this number of VMs is affected, and this means from the vCloud Director point of view, this vApps and this projects and this organizations are affected, and so on. So this relationship mapping is very crucial to get a very fast root cause analysis for the monitoring of the system.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, because in vRealize operations, really there's a lot of adapters that are available which are on Solutions Exchange, which bring in a lot of data. We have the NSX adapter, which brings in the NSX data, the management pack for storage devices, which brings in storage data, and all that is correlated to the VROps engine. But also Hyperic was used for the application endpoint monitoring, which now with vRops6.1 is combined into the product. So you have the application metrics also available within the product. So it really can serve as your end-to-end monitoring solution. Definitely, if you have any questions for our panelists, this is a good time to ask him. And otherwise, go to NX Systems, and why don't you share with us your use of vRealize tool specifically, and any sort of challenges that you had, or any best practices which you would like to share with our audience today.
Basically, since we're a payment company, compliance is one of the most important things we have to achieve and keep constantly achieving. With operations, we can get automated reports, which before used to take a lot of manual work. We're a small IT team, which we could waste all our time issuing reports, but with operations, most of that is automated. Also with automation, as I said before, we were wasting a lot of the IT time provisioning machines, which now is automated in the DevOps hands, in the developers actually. And we also use vRealize Business, previously ITBM. Basically, it gives us an idea in billing for the cloud. Basically, each virtual machine is costing us how much it's costing the business unit, how many units, how much electricity, how much CPU cycles, and that lets us gives us a better idea how to scale our environment, how to downsize some VMs. It basically gives us a holistic view of our environment.
Yeah, a lot of work going on there to bring the vRealize Business very tightly integrated with vRealize Automation and vRealize Operations. Essentially, we are taking a lot of the capacity data from vRealize Operations and showing the cost metrics for capacity utilization, how much you can save, etc., and then integrating that cost back into the catalog, into the vRealize Automation catalog. So when you actually offer self-service to your developers, not only do they know what kind of services they are provisioning, but they also know the cost associated with the service. right? So it becomes a true shopping cart experience. Like for example, you would go to an online store and purchase something and put it in your shopping cart and check it out. You want to know the cost of that, right? So that's the kind of self-service we are trying to enable. Let's go to join experience here, and why don't you walk us through your vRealize implementation and any things that you learned during your implementation which would be helpful to other people who will be using the suite for offering self-service clouds.
Yeah, let me first explain, this is all very high level here on that, which is also good, obviously, but if you have any kind of real in-deep technical questions, so our evangelist for the whole vRealize suite in Join is with me here, and he's sitting in the room, so don't hesitate to throw any technical details on him. He will be more than happy to respond to it.
Thank you.
So in our environment, it's mainly all about time to market. So the most important was to build up a platform which is so much standardized and so much advanced that whatever throws business on you tomorrow as additional product demand, whatever, you would be having the most agile way of delivering that. And this is something which drove us very early into NSX, which started from the beginning with a very high level of automation and so on. So we're using more or less the entire stack, and we're using it not only in terms of products, but we're using it also in the way that it is helping to cope with this agile demand of unpredictable additional product requests. That's basically the main finding.
How about Andrew? Any best practices that you would like to share on the use of vRealize products?
Well, the first thing I would say is, here's a bad practice: don't try to boil the ocean to begin with when you're doing this. We started off with the concept that we would automate deployment of software, and ended up with a platform deployment and the software on top of that, and all of the associated stress in between, shall we say. I think to echo what Bart said earlier on, you need to be organized correctly in order to make this a success. You have to make sure that your infrastructure and your development folks have common goals, clarity of goal, and a common vision for what is actually going to be delivered. Because when I look back on our project, probably it was less about adopting technology and more about getting a clear vision of what we were actually trying to achieve. And as we became more familiar with the product's capabilities, unfortunately the end goal then just moved out and out and out as we tried to continue to boil the ocean.
I hate that when that happens.
So try and define something that's tangible, that's going to bring you some real benefit, and focus on that to begin with, without doing what we tried to do, which was deliver a fully functional private cloud day one.
So did you start with a small section of your cloud or a small section of developers before you sort of moved for larger implementation?
Well, I guess we attempted to do that, and then the business got involved, and the marketing people got involved in terms of what we were going to actually deliver and how we were going to sell it, and we were going to bring the highest level of quality that anybody has ever brought to the clinical trial arena, and that took on a life of its own.
Yeah, talk to us a little bit more about quality and the emphasis on quality and why that becomes so critical to implementation.
In our particular element of pharmaceutical, where most of our revenue and our business is in the pre-commercial end, in the clinical trial end, you'll all probably be familiar with the billions of dollars that folks take to quote to bring a drug to market. We're all about making that drug conception through the market as short a time frame as possible. It costs an awful lot of money to recruit a patient into a clinical trial, and the cardinal sin, to coin a phrase, is to lose a patient once recruited. So for us, that will effectively or can lead to the loss of a client. We typically have a 12-month lead time to get a new client, and if you lose a client through audit or a particularly uncomfortable quality incident, then it can take you 5 years to get them back. You just go on to this unofficial blacklist that it's very difficult even to get them to talk to you before you can get back on there. So quality for us is important commercially, but even more so, it's important that if we're giving drugs to a patient, they have to get the right drug, and we don't want to be responsible for any adverse events. Mm-hmm. And some of the statistics and the randomization algorithms that take place around how these trials are organized are incredibly complex.
So how does that quality translate to what your team needs to provide in terms of cloud services?
Well, we need to be able to provide consistency of environment, of platform, and we also need to make sure that we're delivering the correct software ultimately when it goes in production, but also right the whole way through the software development lifecycle. And by implementing automation, we're de-risking that significantly.
Yeah, this is actually pretty critical, right? And that's why I had asked that question, because if you want to achieve high quality, there's only one way to do that, right? Is through automation. Because the moment you get manual tasks involved, right? I was actually at a customer in New Jersey back in the US, and they have a very large cloud implementation actually in the insurance industry, which is also very regulated. And one of the things it was kind of a recurring theme among all of you is that if anything you are doing 2 or 3 times, figure out a way to automate it, right? Use vRealize automation, use orchestrator, develop a standard process, because otherwise quality will suffer, right? And if you're in an industry like financial or pharmaceutical or payments or things like that, which are highly regulated, quality is key, and the only way to basically achieve that is not to touch anything manually and have and especially in a self-service world where you are actually putting a lot of the tasks that you would traditionally do within IT onto your lines of business or your developers, and you're letting them do what you would do in a nice and controlled fashion. If you provide an automated way of doing that so that there's no manual steps involved, then the quality will be great. So that's a big sort of takeaway. So thank you, Andrew, for sharing that. Bart, at ING, you've implemented basically all our products, from automation operations all the way to the EMC federation sort of tools, right? Can you share some best practices with our audience on what you learned about the tools and technologies, what to watch out for?
I agree, don't try to boil the ocean. Maybe we should try it together and get it done. But if you look at it, first figure out what is the problem that you first want to solve, and break it down in an area. If you look at it from a financial perspective, for example, ING, the cost for an infrastructure is either the hardware, the software, or the people. See where the biggest gain is. Where is the pot of gold that you want to resolve from a financial perspective? From a usability perspective, also try to figure out where is the biggest frustration and pain in the organization, and do that end to end, from a process perspective and from a technology perspective. If you then look at the tools and the possibilities, I think any idea that is possible you could implement with the VMware tools. That's not the problem. The technology is not the issue. It's your internal processes, perhaps your internal skills, but in the end you can automate everything, and the automation should bring you predictability. At least from a banking perspective, it should be predictability and availability. Since it's an automated process consistently executed, the outcome is also consistent and gives also consistency about the availability. Within the bank, that it's headlining news if the mobile bank app of ING is out for a couple of hours. If we're down, we're 8 o'clock headline news. From an infrastructure perspective, you don't want to be the root cause of that. Because it's going to be a very difficult discussion. And to solve that problem, you need to be consistent, predictable, and have that automated end-to-end so people can repeat it and rely on that. And if you look at the friction points in a highly regulated environment, for example, PCI compliance, firewalling will play a big part in that. If you looked at ING, pain points were not on the VM provisioning. For some reason in the cloud, everybody talks about how quickly they can spin up VMs and decommission them and destroy them. For me, that's not that relevant. It's about the operational activities. Focus on that, because a lot of people are operationally busy to keep things running. If you can make that also predictable and consistent, then you have also a lot more gain. It doesn't give you the cool numbers as in I provisioned 1,000 VM this month in the X amount of hours. Focus on what the business needs and have a sit with them, but also explain why you can't do certain things. The technical capabilities are there. The VMware products can do everything, but it's on the other hand not a reason to do it. There must be some kind of a constraint why you focus on certain things. Take small steps. Expect to fail, because that will happen at some point as well, and make sure that your surroundings are also aware that failure is an option, and then you learn from that and then move on. So if you look at from the technical capabilities from my perspective, the biggest gains, I like VCOps for the same reason that is mentioned to my left hand side. It has all the integration packs. One of the problems that we try to solve within ING is people. Engineering skills to integrate products. If you have a tool like VCOps that comes with a lot of management packs, it removes that engineering effort, and you can spend those resources on something that could add value to the bank. So that in pre-integration adds value. If you look at the technical capabilities, NSX, it allows you to be very flexible in your firewall implementation. Doesn't mean you should, but at least it gives you the possibility to build it, automate it, make it consistent, and make it self-service, regardless if it's development, test, acceptance, and production. Within ING, the DevOps teams themselves deploy in production whenever they want. It's not an infrastructure job to deploy an application. We do 17,000 deployments a month.
Wow, yeah, that's a big number.
And that's need consistency. If you don't have consistency, 17,000, it will break down, it will fall apart.
Yeah, this continuous deployment model does require very, very high degree of automation and integration, because things cannot break, right? And DevOps, sooner or later, every one of our organizations are going to move to DevOps model if they haven't already, and there will be continuous delivery, SaaS applications, whatnot. And that's why this automation sort of becomes very key. We have just a couple of minutes left. I'd really like to encourage anybody from the audience, if you have any questions, to raise your hand. Or if you would like to share your experience, right, with vRealize products, with others. This is really a community building exercise, so please go ahead. Yeah, gentleman there. And let's get you the mic though.
Hi, I was just wondering if any of the panel have used vCloud Director and had to migrate away from vCloud Director to vRealize, and if they've got any sort of best practices or gotchas that they maybe hurdles they hit while they did that migration.
Anyone?
Sorry.
Nope.
Okay.
Maybe you can share something with the audience, if you have.
Well, we're looking to do it, so yeah, it's just.
Okay, as you know, I'll share something from a product perspective. Is that vCloud Director was really the lab manager sort of use case, which was used to set up and tear down environments and provide them more like a service provider. vCloud Director itself has now been absorbed into vCenter, and the capabilities there are being migrated to vRealize automation. So I think they've developed different levels of absorbing those things. So for example, some of the constructs which were available in vCloud Director can now be imported into vRealize automation. So basically vRealize automation replaces vCloud Director as your provider tool or your self-service portal tool. There's more details around how the migrations happen. I guess this is not the right forum, but if you connect with me after, I can connect you to the people who are responsible for that and can share with you the details around the technology migration.
Okay, thanks.
Any other
I'd like to add something.
Sorry.
I'd like to add.
Oh, you wanted to add something? Go ahead.
Not to that, something else.
Okay.
Basically, before I was saying the visibility we got with operations, for example, one thing is we were investing a lot of money into an old storage system, and we kept doing it because that's what we were doing. So we kept, renewing the support contract. And when we actually looked into the reports, we saw that it was an old storage system, not a lot of capacity, very slow. With the money we saved from the maintenance on it, we bought new hardware, which was 10 times as faster with more capacity. So it's this type of data that you can crunch, which gives you the ability to react and be more proficient.
Yeah, and I've often heard that a lot of teams are using public clouds here, right? And while there's definitely an advantage of doing that because it provides some sort of scale to your IT organization, but it's not often the silver bullet, right? And I was wondering if any of our panelists can share if they're using public clouds in their environment, and how does the cloud management platform sort of work with public clouds?
From a banking perspective, we don't allow it.
Okay.
So I'll hunt you down if you do.
Okay. It's highly regulated, right?
So it's good to add a bit to that. Obviously, there's shadow IT, so it will happen, that's for sure. As long as it's small and for development and it doesn't really touch the bank, then that's absolutely fine. If you look at it from a bit more long-term strategy, I said in the beginning, IT is becoming a commodity and infrastructure itself is becoming a commodity. With x86, Linux, Windows, those kind of systems becoming the commodity, we will start using public cloud offerings in term. And that could be the next 3 years, could be 5 years. It highly depends on the regulator and how the world evolves. So doing the internal ING private cloud is a starting point to be able to start workload migrations at some point in time to a public cloud offering. And vRealize fits nicely in that model. It has the capability to integrate with Amazon and Azure and vCloud Air, so there's choice already. Also with the announcement around NSX and Amazon, that also helps. So public clouds are part of the strategy, but we don't do it yet, and that's mostly due to regulations.
Yes, for us it's a big difference. So while your end customers become frustrated if you are not fast enough, or will immediately go and look for the service somewhere else. So that's a daily challenge. So first of all, whatever you build has to be good enough to compete with whatever external cloud service you find on the market. That's very important. And the second thing is obviously we integrate heavily public cloud services. So it doesn't matter, it's Amazon, it's also Microsoft, but we are obviously looking forward to vCloud Air with the announcement that we had here to being able to just push workloads via NSX to the public cloud. That is something that from operations perspective will help us a lot. It's also something which is helping us in keeping with the demand resources, because not all those things that are currently running in data center, even if we are very careful and always have a SaaS first approach, have to stay in the data center when they are there. So and that's an easy way to get it out. But for instance, let's say big data, entire data warehouse applications, everything is already in Hadoop or in the public cloud.
In the public cloud. Yeah, I think the one thing which I wanted to share is that if you use vRealize products and you have formed your cloud management platform strategy, that is the first step, right? Because as an IT team, you don't want your lines of business going outside of your control to public clouds, and then you don't know what's going on there, and then it comes back and becomes like a shadow IT effort, which you have to integrate back and things like that. So if you have your self-service portals defined, which can span across private public clouds, then that's a big win. So with that, I just wanted to thank our panelists. Thank you for being here and sharing your best practices with us.